Welcome to Straight Talk on Retirement, your no-hype source for financial advice and making informed choices about your retirement planning. Get on the phone to talk today at 969-KTRS.
The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and JBL Financial Services, Inc. are separate entities from LPL Financial.
Now, here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
Well, hello, St. Louis, and welcome to Straight Talk on Retirement. You're live and local, St. Louis's favorite financial call-in show. I'm Jeff Lapidus, president of JBL Financial Services. Our offices are located in beautiful, sunny, really cold right now, downtown Clayton, Missouri. I'm a 40-year veteran of the financial services area, a fee-based financial planner and wealth manager. And I'm joined, happily, by my very favorite oldest prodigal daughter, Aaron Lapidus, who also is a fee-based financial planner and wealth manager.
And we help our clients make smart choices about their money. The way we do that is by designing a game plan, a written step-by-step strategy, a real game plan that has several goals in mind.
First is to preserve, protect, and prudently grow the assets our clients have taken their entire lifetimes to accumulate. Second is to deliver a reliable stream of income, one that they can count on so they can do all the things they'd like to do during retirement.
And third is cost-effectively addressing their health care needs, like helping individuals enroll in Medicare and choosing the right plan to supplement their medical coverage.
And then when they're done enjoying their assets during their lifetime, we show them how to pass them on to the people they love, whether it's their spouses or children, grandchildren, churches, or charities, whoever it might be, with Uncle Sam or the tax courts taking a big bite out of their money. And as their wealth managers, Aaron and I watch their money every single day to make sure they're staying on track. And that's why they call us retirement coaches. Good morning, babe.
Good morn.
How great. You know, this week.
This week.
4.7% increase in the S&P 500.
Was the best week in, since November or something?
Exactly. Fabulous. So hopefully you have been invested, staying invested, and happily watching your money grow.
At your risk tolerance.
Exactly. Based on your current risk tolerance. Your mix of stocks to bonds to cash, always very important. But again, we want to thank everybody for tuning in today. And as a reminder, all of our clients, they're folks like you. They're our listeners. They're over the age of 55. They would like to retire, or they're already retired. And as Aaron mentioned, our goal is to create a game plan for them so they can have a fun and financially successful retirement.
That's right. And there are several ways that you can keep in touch with us during the week.
We love that.
That's right. You can log on to our website, jblfinancial.com. On the lower left-hand side of the page, you can click Sign Up to our monthly newsletter. We call that The Coach's Corner. Or you can click in the box in the upper left-hand side of the screen that says Contact Us. If you have a question, if you'd like to schedule a coaching session, if you have a comment, those go directly to our email, and we'll be sure to help you out with whatever your email contains.
That's right. And we do have a monthly newsletter, right?
That's right. And since it is newly February, I thought we should discuss. It is February, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Thought we should discuss the new newsletter since I have it with me.
Yes, we'll go for it. We have 4 articles each month.
The first being the best right now. This is just great
Your
stuff.
favorite one.
It's great. I don't know if you've seen this yet. Majority of young adults living at home.
What's so great about that?
Well, because I was just wondering.
You're not giving me any hints here, are you, honey?
The majority of young adults are living at home.
Your mother would love for you to come back and join us. But we've already had this conversation.
I was telling a client about this particular story just days ago. His son purchased a home nearby.
Yes.
Great. Congratulations. And the parents, our clients, are remodeling their home. So he was trying to make the decision, can we stay in our house while it's being remodeled, or might we go live with our son just down the road?
Down the road was really like 3 blocks.
It really close. Yeah. And then I said, well, this is a little bit of an inverse, but when I moved back to St. Louis 8 years ago now, almost to the day, I did indeed live with my parents as a young adult.
For 2 weeks.
And then I was unceremoniously kicked to the curb.
You were asked to leave in the nicest way possible.
As quickly as possible.
Well, as I said, honey, I knew your boss and I knew what he was paying you, so you could afford to leave. So we
kicked me out.
Well, it's not because of your joyful disposition, and frankly, not because of your cooking, because you were one of the best cooks of all time, but
good disposition, good cook, and still, that's not enough, guys.
No, not enough separation. I think it's important. And, I know you need, and frankly, it was really self-protection for you because you needed a break from me.
Aw.
Right?
Well.
Your mother's still not talking to me, but that's another matter. We'll talk about it another time. So, good article.
Wait, there's more. There's more articles. Please,
more.
Pardon me. Here we go. Key retirement tax numbers for 2021. So this is a helpful article, less entertaining article.
What the limits are? Is this
modified adjusted gross ranges for Roth contributions for 2021?
And this is important because there are many folks, even though you may be participating in a company-sponsored plan, you could still be eligible to make contributions for yourself and or your spouse.
So if you're married filing jointly, they've increased those numbers slightly for you, so you can earn a little bit more income, basically $2,000 to $2,000 more, about $2,000 more a year, and still be eligible to contribute to a Roth if you're married filing jointly. And if you're a single head of household, they've increased that number by just $1,000. So not much, but so if you were able to contribute last year and you didn't receive a raise, most likely you'll be able to contribute this year.
And I think what's important here also is that most folks have not filed their 2020 taxes. And even though the ranges have changed a little bit,
if you look back, you could maybe do some contributions before you submit your taxes, before April 15th.
That's the big deal, right?
That is right. So you can do a retroactive contribution. They don't allow for retroactive distributions, though. So, for example, this wasn't an issue last year because we were able to skip required minimum distributions.
For everybody from each type of an account.
Right. But if, let us say, for example, this year you accidentally miss a required minimum distribution, you can't just make it up by taking a retroactive one. You actually have to write the IRS. You have to submit documentation to the IRS and then pull the money out.
And send a
letter of contrition.
And a bottle of tears with you because
it's your pound of flesh.
It's literally the worst penalty in the tax code.
It is, however, the worst penalty in the tax code. However, because it's 50% of what the distribution should have been, then you have to take the full distribution, then you get to pay taxes on the 150% of the distribution. So that's it. That's the big issue. But if you did it in error, meaning you missed it, you were off by $100 or $200, $300, and you want to make that up to be completely clean, there is documentation to submit, take the distribution, pay the taxes, and then they won't hit you with the penalty because the IRS isn't there to punish, but they do want their money.
Yeah, and there certainly are legitimate reasons that this could have occurred, and we've had some situations we've seen in the past where somebody had an account that was out there, a CD or something that was in a bank, and
they didn't realize it was inside of an IRA, which means even if it's a CD, you still have to keep that into account of the overall amount. So it's important.
And I just want to remind everybody, the nice thing is that on your January statements,
they tell you.
Exactly, from your investment advisory firms you're working with.
The custodian's required to put it there on the form.
Yes, they do. And so what we do in our office is we start the process of adding up everybody's required minimum distributions for the year.
Subtracting out whatever they might be taking on a monthly basis from those retirement accounts.
And then during our coaching sessions, which we're starting.
Not only are we starting, but we're having a Monday morning webinar. Everyone received an email every client received an email about it.
A client-only webinar.
That's correct. In March, we're going to do an everybody webinar that's going to focus on financial planning topics, but we decided that, unfortunately, with people still social distancing and the restrictions, that we wanted to still be able to reach out to everyone for the first quarter. So we're going to have a 9 a.m. webinar. If it is approved through compliance after we have the initial webinar, we will send it out to all of the clients if it's approved for use. If not, then you'll just have to call in for your own special coaching session.
Yes, which will be great. And again, all of our clients are listeners, so we know you're listening today. Thank you.
Thank you very
and
much.
Hopefully you'll join us on Monday.
You'll get the link on Sunday night and Monday morning.
Yeah. I mean, the nice thing is we can speak a little more freely.
Well, we can talk specifically about client accounts, but on the air, unfortunately, we can't do that because, unfortunately, not all of you are clients yet.
That's right.
The third article, COVID-19 and the importance of disability income insurance. So this does speak about COVID-19 because some people have unfortunately had cases where they're out for extended periods of time, maybe qualifying them for short or long-term disability. But this is also a good article describing short and long-term disability itself and the differences.
Which is good. And you're right, honey. We this is kind of a corporate corner where it makes sense to maybe knock the dust off of those employee benefit handbooks that you have and really just take a read and say, how do I become eligible for benefits?
Mm-hmm.
What's the benefit duration period?
Right.
And what
are my waiting periods? Do I have any elimination any eliminations or anything like that? And a quick way to do this, you could break out the employee handbook to find who your short-term and long-term disability carriers are, and you could even call them directly with your information, and they can tell you specifically, based on your plan, what your benefits are and how to get the ball rolling if you need to. Usually it's a bit of paperwork.
Cool. So what's
our final article for the month is tips to help control your finances during the pandemic.
Sounds good.
I mean, there's a few interesting ones on here. I think a lot of what I have been hearing in our reviews is that people aren't having difficulty saving money at this point. They're, with not a lot to do, not a lot of places to go as freely as before. They're not able to travel as freely, not spending money, but we've taken this opportunity to say maybe it's time to look at paying down some of those debts that we were just servicing.
Right. Obligations. Certainly it gives you an opportunity to do some planning, especially if you're going to do any type of home repairs or remodeling or restorations.
Right.
That's a big thing to do as well.
I'd also think you spend $3,000 on a trip every year. Well, maybe we just push that towards the remodel in a couple of years and you're at a wash.
It's all good. Again, we call it the Coach's Corner. Easy to access. Just go to our website, jblfinancial.com. Click on that Coach's Corner newsletter icon in the bottom left-hand corner. And if you feel like it and you're ready, you're over 55, you're within 5 years of retirement, you'd like to retire, you want to get a second opinion on where you are, walking the way down that yellow brick road, as I like to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Just hit the Contact Us section, send us an email. We'd be very happy to arrange for a free coaching session at our offices in Clayton, temporarily.
That's right. We'll be in Olivet in a few short months.
Just down the road, new corporate headquarters, etc. We'll be moving there probably in April. More fun.
More fun.
We'd love to see you again. Easy to do. Or give our office a call, 314-863-0008. Again, 314-863-0008. And again, we are happy to send out those newsletters by email every single month, which is great. We always have 3 topics or more that we like to discuss every week. We know that you have a lot of things on your mind. We're live and local.
So give
Phone
us a
lines
call.
are open. Eric's ready for you. Give us a call. 314-931-5877. Star 5877 from your cell phones, or Now that Erin's here, she can look at it. 84126 from the increasingly popular KTRS text line.
I can indeed look at it from here.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, I thought that we should kick the show off with a very interesting coaching session that I had this past week.
That's great. And what was the overriding theme that we're going to talk about this morning, which I think is good?
When should I take my Social Security?
That's a good one.
Should I wait to take my Social Security? I guess that's the same, almost the same idea as when should I take it. But this is an interesting case because we met with Julie, you and I, 3 years ago.
It happens.
It does happen. She was wanting to retire back then and wanted to know how she could do it. And through our analysis, we really determined that she was someone that needed to pay down some debts. She had a mortgage that absolutely needed to be taken care of, and we needed a little bit more time to build up her
nest egg.
Exactly. So we sent her off and said, let's get this mortgage paid down. We gave her a few tips and tricks on how to do that, and then let's flip on over to trying to put as much as we can away for retirement.
And I thought one thing nice about this situation with Julie, which also happens with many of other folks that visit with us, and they are a couple of years out from retirement, is that we really request, and many of them do, get back to us.
Keep in touch. Tell us how it's going. Or if it's gone off track, maybe we can help you get it back on track again.
And, they're excited to report what they've done.
We're excited.
We are very excited because we love that. We love when we obviously give folks advice and they accept it and they take it, and then they're starting to see those tangible results. So, as Julie was getting closer to dealing with the elimination of her obligations, she got excited about it, and I thought what was kind of neat is it becomes almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, where she really did. She was actually able to do it quicker.
That's
than she
right.
originally had imagined. She was really focused on that, and that's cool.
Right. So fast forward 3 years to this past week. Julie really wants to retire this year, and she wanted to know if she would be able to do it. But she's been talking to a lot of people. A lot of her friends have retired, and she really wants to wait to put off her Social Security until 70. Because she doesn't want to touch that nest egg she just spent the last few years really working to build up.
Well, and I'm sure she also, along the way, received this type of input from other radio shows.
Could be.
Maybe articles, etc. And,
there's a lot of information out there.
And most of it says, put it off as long as you can.
Right.
Not always the case.
Right, and that is why we always want to do the analysis with everyone using their numbers.
Right.
So
tell us a little about Julie.
Sure. So Julie needs about $2,200 a month to make her life work, is what we came up with.
And that's really because she doesn't have...
Mortgage, gone. Debt, gone. Both of those things that we asked her to take care of, she's taking care of that. And to add to a great story, she happened to receive a small inheritance, which only happened to help her, and we'll get to that in a moment.
Well, also, she was, all through her health care, she was old enough to where she could also get involved in Medicare, so we didn't have to really worry about, am I correct?
That is correct. 3 years ago, today Julie is 67, so she's eligible for Medicare. 3 years ago, she was just on the cusp, so we would have had to have added some extra income for her in order to make up for paying for COBRA for a year or half a year or so if she had retired 3 years ago. So if Julie decides to retire in 2021. She needs about $2,200 a month. We need to gross that up for taxes, which means she needs $2,640 a month.
Because you're adding, she lives in Missouri, not Illinois.
That's right.
So you've added a component of 15% for federal and
I made
5%
it 20.
for state.
Yeah, exactly. So I made it a full 20%, give a little buffer, even though we don't think she'll get to that, past the 10% mark on the federal side.
Yes.
So on an annual basis, that means that Julie would need $31,700 for the year. That is if she does not take her Social Security as soon as she retires. So we decided let's play the waiting game. We're going to wait until she gets we're going to wait 2 years because although she's 67, she's closer to 68 at this point.
Gotcha.
So if we wait 2 years to take her Social Security benefit, that means we need to have $63,400 of assets in order to maintain her lifestyle for the next 2 years. So that's $2,200. I'm sorry, that's $2,600 a month for 24 months.
Yeah, I think what's important here also is to realize that, we're looking at, she isn't going to have any income.
Right.
So we're actually looking at a potential drawdown of the assets that she has.
Correct.
We're also not making any assumption here about the earnings on that capital,
right,
and whether that would be used to offset this money. So I think we're being extremely
very conservative.
Right, and maybe too much, but that's okay.
So then let's fast forward 2 years to get to Social Security.
Right.
Julie still needs the $2,200 a month. We gross that back for taxes to get the $2,600. But Julie's going to receive $2,000 a month from Social Security when she turns 70. That means she's only going to need $600 or so, $650 a month.
And I think what this also is that Julie, she wasn't maxing out on her Social Security benefits this year. She didn't earn enough to do that. We have a lot of folks that do, obviously.
Sure, so a max benefit could be much higher.
Right.
This just happened to be her maximum benefit.
But she's short.
Right. So she's still short. She's still short about $640 a month, which means that's $7,680 a year.
Gotcha.
So
that's better than $63,000, or $31,000, but
that's very true. So, and in that particular case, we like to go to the end and say, well, when you're getting your Social Security benefit and still needing that $7,000 a year, how much capital are we going to need in order to support that for as long as you're around? We'll need $192,000 of assets.
Based on the $640 per month, is that correct?
Correct, because we're using a prudent rate of withdrawal of 4%, meaning that we know Julie wants to live off the interest and the earnings of her capital, not deplete it.
Okay.
But if you remember, to wait on Social Security, we still need $63,000.
So basically, we have to reduce that capital amount she has by that amount.
Or if you add those two pieces of capital together, she basically needs $150,000 a month. She needs $192 plus $63,000. $250,000 a month. Annual. $250,000 of capital she would need in order to make the waiting strategy work. Well, as we were chatting with Julie, she let us know that she built her 401k up to $220,000, which is great.
Yeah, super. Last year was very helpful for her.
Yes, and she happened to receive an inheritance over the last 3 years of $20,000. So she's had that in savings, giving her a total of $240,000. That means that if we were to employ this strategy, we would be short.
And really, not by a little, but the truth is a lot, because at this point, that $20,000 of savings, if that's her vault,
right?
We don't even
want to count that. Really,
that's right. So she really is short, and I know that was something that bothered you.
That's right. Because even if we assume that, we don't want to make growth assumptions because we want to try and create the most conservative approach to our financial game plan here, because things can happen. So I said to Julie, why don't we look at this a different way? You're 67. You are at your full retirement benefit, and you've already gotten 2 more bumps of that 8%. So if you still need $2,200 a month, $2,600 when we gross it up for taxes. If we take your Social Security benefit now, it's $1,900 a month.
About $100 less per month.
Exactly, $1,200 less a year.
Gotcha.
She'll need $750 a month over 12 months, so about $9,000.
I've got you. Which means how much capital would she require?
$220,000.
Which is where she is now.
Which is exactly where she is now, which means she lines up perfectly with all the hard work she did, not only accumulating her assets over the last several years of her working, but over the last 3 years paying that debt down and helping to build her retirement nest egg. She really did a nice job.
I think it's interesting because this really brings up a question about choice. where is the comfort zone? I know that for you, as you expressed to me, and frankly for me when I looked at this situation also, is that we're more comfortable as advisors for her to take her Social Security now.
Yes.
Because what we've then done is that using that 4% prudent withdrawal rule, which we do believe works.
Yes.
She'll be in a position where she can have that income flow that she needs. But by waiting and having to consume capital, we really had to make some, we had to, I like to use the term, bring hope a little bit more into the equation here.
And not only are we bringing hope into the equation, but the way that I look at this is all your money. You saved it either in your retirement plan or you were forced to save it by paying Social Security taxes. This Social Security benefit is yours. So but they're only going to give it to you in a certain amount per month. You're on a fixed income. So if you can create more liquidity for yourself with your nest egg, meaning, you're not needing to use every single dollar in order to make up your monthly income, that gives you more flexibility in retirement. And simply by saying, I want to wait because I want that maximum Social Security benefit, you really decreased Julie's flexibility and liquidity because now we need every single dollar for the rest of Julie's life to make sure that we can continue that 4% withdrawal rate. All of her capital is tied to that versus, now she's got a little bit of a cushion.
Yes, I don't disagree with you. And we, as investment advisors, we believe that Julie needs to be invested over a long period of time.
Right.
We're also depending on, by her being invested, that's going to create some growth and or income that we can then draw to make her lifestyle work. And I think you're right, honey. I mean, at least in this situation, that was what our recommendation was. And I think that what happens is, Julie's going to have to make up her own mind.
That's right. We made our recommendation, and certainly we wanted, Julie came to the office saying, this is what I want to do. So we also showed her what that looks like. So we want to show both sides. It's not our decision to make it truly as Julie's, but at least she has all the information now, and it's using her specific need and her specific numbers versus, if you log on to the Social Security Administration website, they do have great articles that use fact-based situations, but they're not your numbers. So when you get to put your numbers on paper, I think it makes it a lot more concrete.
And Julie, her decisions were a little easier than if Julie was still married. And
that is true.
Generally, I mean, when you take a fact situation like this where Julie's not married.
Right.
Okay. And therefore, there is no surviving spouse that could benefit from her putting her Social Security benefits off.
Or there's also no income between when Julie retires and if she planned to wait for Social Security.
Right.
Some couples do not retire at the same time, which means that might give you the opportunity to put off one of the Social Security benefits because you still have someone else's income coming in when you're a party of one, or if you both retire at the same time and both decide not to take income, that's when the question really arises.
Yes, and then the other, one other issue is we obviously would be responsible for creating that $2600 a month for Julie for the first 2 years before
right.
Social Security kicked in, which is how comfortable is she going to be
pulling that much?
Exactly, and actually having the financial markets really having to work in a positive way for her
for the full 2 years.
That's right, before we actually turn on the faucet for Social Security. Julie obviously is in a situation here today where what we're doing is she doesn't have a great income need. She's a rock star because she got rid of her debt obligations.
And now she has enough capital to support the rest of her needs.
Yes, which is great. Having a coaching session
right.
puts folks in a position to where we can, and what was neat is that you obviously did this. It wasn't a hypothetical. We did this on the board.
Right.
Right in front of Julie so that she could stare at it, absorb it, and say, what makes sense for me? And then the nice part also is that I know she asked you, since we stored electronically, we sent her an email. with a
That's right.
with,
We
a,
were
with,
able
a,
to-
with a copy of it, so that
Right.
she could stare at it and go, "Okay, these are my decisions that I'm making. Now we can move forward in this way." So it'll
Right.
be interesting to.
See how it turns out.
Yes, I mean it's always fun, and I know that it isn't a function of making our job easier, but I think in terms of a sense of security for her,
Right.
taking your Social Security benefit isn't the same. It isn't the same for her. She's single
Right.
versus someone that's married versus someone that's widowed.
Right.
Julie's health. I mean, there's so many factors that are involved here. Everybody's a little different, and you know what's fun?
We can accommodate for everyone's differences.
Exactly, but the algebra at the end of the day comes out
All
to be
the same.
It all comes out to be the same. I think that's what's important. But Julie, we want to thank you so much for visiting with us, and obviously giving us an opportunity to talk a little about you, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of fun, even though her name isn't really Julie.
Well,
We're not allowed to do
protecting
that.
the innocent.
Well, it's better than what we
Right.
usually do, which is great. Again, our phone lines are open. We'd love to hear from you. Join the talk. 931-5877, star 5877 for your cell phones, or 84126 from the text line. And I know we're on an hour earlier than we usually are.
It's okay.
Some of our folks are probably waking up going,
Where are they?
"Where's the yard shop?" Well, they're really listening to Joshy and the Animal Advice Show, but they missed some of the yard sale today. They're unhappy.
How do they even do COVID yard sales?
It's on the,
I never
it's
even
on the
thought
telephone,
about that.
babe.
Are you serious? They post it on the internet or something, and then it's over the
No,
phone?
people call, honey.
No, I mean, how do you do an actual yard? Not the show. How do you do a yard sale? All random people coming in and out of your house and stuff.
Well, I'm sure that you probably would do it outside, which would make it a freezer,
Garage sale?
a freezer yard sale.
Oh, I see.
Pretty cold, and I'm sure you would, request people.
Well, I guess
to
that's
wear
why they call it
masks.
yard sale, right? Because it's out in your yard, out in the yard.
I got you.
I didn't.
You're so bright.
Just
honey.
put that together right there on the fly.
I think it's like your mom. Sometimes you need to work on these. Okay. As it would be. Well, that's great. Again, phone lines are open. We'd love to hear from you. 931-5877. Star. Not Aaron, who is the star, but star 5877. From your cell phones, or 84126 from the popular KTRS text line.
It is popular.
I don't want to take a break.
Then let's keep going.
Let's keep going if we can. I'm really enjoying myself this morning. Let's talk a little bit about a situation that we saw the other day, and I think this is a really important discussion. Should I name my trust as the primary beneficiary of my IRA assets? So before we get into this question, we do want to just do a very, very brief discussion about living trusts. A living trust is a document that's created in conjunction with a will and usually your medical directives. Cost you about $3,000.
Powers of attorney. Yeah.
Durable powers of attorney thing. Cost you about $3,000. And your attorney generally will direct you to have your assets titled in the name of the trust.
If they can be titled in the name of the trust.
And really what we're talking about, folks, if you have one, if you haven't done one, thinking about doing one, what we're really discussing here is non-retirement plan assets.
So that would include any accounts that you have that are like labeled non-retirement. They're joint accounts. They're individual accounts. They're not IRA. They're not Roth assets. They're not your 401k.
Your cars. You could have a residence trust, or if you don't, you do a beneficiary deed for your home, which will then send that to your beneficiaries and not go through. Again, the
pieces
idea,
of property.
we're talking about bypassing probate.
Right, pieces of property. If you are a person that has high-priced collectibles, like individuals
Yes.
that own art or jewelry, things
Sure.
like that, you might consider putting those.
But your retirement assets are different.
Yes.
These assets right now are owned in your Social Security number. So guess what? We ask, I mean, and it's unusual. We get asked this question all the time. You cannot
Rename.
retitle those assets into the name of your trust. And the reason is you haven't paid tax on them yet. They're
Right.
sitting there in pre-tax accounts. However, you can use the trust as your beneficiary.
Which means that when you do pass away, those assets will be passed to the trust. So,
and then distributed based on the writing in the document.
So although they're not currently titled that way, they're considered a part of the trust because eventually they will be it will flow into the trust.
So something to consider here, maybe it's easy to remember. Any account, any type of asset that you can name a beneficiary, your IRA, an annuity, a life insurance contract,
a Roth
IRA, thank you. All those assets having a named beneficiary will bypass probate.
And also your trust.
That's really good, right. And your will.
Right.
The custodian is going to pay the money to the people that you want.
And the reason for that is they made a determination about this a few years ago because this doesn't happen infrequently. Your beneficiary designations are usually up to date because as you are moving accounts around, you have to rename beneficiaries on the new accounts. But usually when you create a trust, you create it, or a will, you create it at a life-changing event. You're getting married, you're having children. You don't necessarily change it again. So then people pass away with unupdated documents and a beneficiary form that it looks different. Well, because you physically signed the beneficiary form and it's dated most likely past the date of your trust, they're going to take what's on the paper, not what's in your trust or will. Right.
And that then goes to the question, do I need a trust? This is a subject of debate. Aaron and I are not lawyers, but we do read these documents every day. And our suggestion to you, and I'm just going to relay information one of my attorney friends, and actually current attorney, has said to me, is that if you trust the beneficiaries that you are going to name, you probably don't need a trust. Because the purpose of a trust is to hold assets,
disperse them in a specific way based on how you've written
after your death.
Trust.
So there are some reasons that you would have a trust, right? If you maybe had a child or grandchild that was special needs, you want to hold assets for them so that they can create an income stream for them to help them with their lifestyle. That makes sense.
If you have children, so if you're a young couple and you have children, or you're one of our clients and you have grandchildren potentially, they're minors, maybe you want those assets held protected.
That would be one thing. The other thing would be, certainly as we discussed here previously, if you feel that the people that might be, one or more of those that might be receiving your assets, are not financially competent to handle or manage those, then you might want to have a trust, which basically is going to be restricting their right to or the way that they withdraw assets from that trust. Those would be some reasons that you might consider doing that. Again, you don't trust, and therefore you need an asset to be a trust. The trustee of the trust can be a human being.
Or it could be an institution.
Or it could be, as an example, our broker-dealer, LPL Financial, and many large broker-dealers, they have trust companies. So you're keeping if you decide, hey, it's a good idea to keep my assets custodial where they are now, and maybe have a third party being in there to actually do the administration of the trust and maybe actually direct how money goes out of the trust instead of leaving that responsibility to a human being to make those determinations. Makes sense. And where would that happen? Well, when it's mom and dad, if you're in a situation where you have one child that you consider to be more trustworthy, more financially competent, more savvy at that, maybe looking out for the needs of another child, their sibling, you might not be comfortable with the idea of one sibling having to go ask the other sibling for money. And maybe what happens then is you're using a third-party trustee to be involved in doing that. That can be valuable for you.
It's possible that you may have no living heirs. You may need a trust company to administer your trust.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about here, if I may, if we may, and we may because it's our time, right?
Proceed, please.
Thank you. Should I name my trust that I've created as the primary beneficiary? Primary.
That means as soon as you pass away, that's where the money goes.
Of my IRA assets. There are some situations that we believe that this makes sense.
Right. The first would be you don't have a spouse.
Right. You don't have a spouse. And the reason for that is that transfers to spouses at death are tax-free. You can move the money over. They can add that to their account. And they can then take control. They can take control of that asset, unlike non-spousal beneficiaries.
Right, and this is especially important if you and your spouse happen to have a significant age gap between the two of you.
Even more important,
because let's use the example that the husband is 75 years old and the wife is 62. The husband is already taking required minimum distributions from his IRA.
Yes.
The wife doesn't have to necessarily.
If she actually accepts those assets and they bring his into hers, in theory, she's just added another 8-9 years worth of time where she can take distributions, but she's not required to.
That's right. Or let's say that the spouse was even younger, 58, and the husband was 75. Well, they were living off of that income, so she can leave the money in her husband's. She can leave it in her husband's name and continue to take the distributions because he was over the age of 72 or over the age of 59 and a half. So he could take distributions from his IRA. She can't take them from her own for another year.
Right. Another reason why you might consider, again, not having a spouse. Number two would
not having a spouse
would be a reason that you would consider naming the trust as the primary beneficiary. The other one might be, and we see this often, is our clients have no other living heirs.
So their intention is most likely to donate to multiple charities, potentially over time.
Or I should say living heirs that they like, that they want to give money to, right? That would be a reason to do that. The third one would be, again, they only have non-spouse beneficiaries, like children, like nieces or nephews, like grandchildren, great-grandchildren.
Like how we mentioned also maybe people with special needs, individuals that are financially
minors,
not as competent as others, those type of situations.
Yes, and they want to create some restriction of how these assets are made available to those beneficiaries. They don't, I hate to use the word they don't trust, but the thing is they don't. They don't trust them to get this big lump sum and do whatever they want to create restrictions to capital, and that can make some sense.
There's also an important point to make here. Creating a trust does not stop taxation on any of these assets.
Right.
It changes the taxation in some cases because, for example, let's say you have an IRA and you've moved the IRA into the trust and this individual had passed away this year. The IRA has to be liquidated within a 10-year period, but the trust could say
under the new rules,
but the trust could say that beneficiary cannot receive that much money over that course of time. So what that means is it has to be distributed from the IRA into a trust account, have the taxes paid, but that
at a
higher rate, but that individual still doesn't get the money yet.
Gotcha.
Gotta wait.
Exactly. So
this is not an avoidance of taxation conversation.
No, you can't avoid paying taxes on your IRA assets that you didn't consume unless you either pass them to your spouse, which they still have to pay taxes, or you donate them to charity. That's it. Just no
those are the only options.
Unless you convert to a Roth, which we
but
don't like.
You're paying taxes anyways. You just paid it in the front instead of the back.
So let's talk about the no's, if we can. Why you don't want to do it. Why you definitely. So we talked about the yeses, which is, again, you don't have a spouse. There's no living heirs that you want to leave the money to, and or you only have non-spouse beneficiaries.
Right.
But where is it not in your best interest to do this?
When you have a spouse.
Yeah. This can be, in some cases, a train wreck. I mean, and as Aaron specifically said, you have a situation where maybe you have a spouse that's younger. They may even be actively at work.
Mm-hmm.
They're not required to. They're under the age of 72, so they don't have to take required minimum distributions. They receive an IRA, or they don't receive an IRA.
No, they don't, because now it's in a trust.
It's in a trust, and unfortunately, they're forced to take this money out under the new law. They're going to be treated like a non-spouse beneficiary. right?
Because it is a non-spouse beneficiary.
Right.
It's a trust.
So now they've got to take this money out they have to have this account emptied within a 10-year period.
Which means either they're going to distribute it out of the trust, pay the taxes as a person, or they're going to distribute it inside the trust and pay even more taxes.
If they had named the trust as the contingent beneficiary, which is the secondary beneficiary, what would have happened is that spouse, assuming that they were the intended beneficiary initially, they could take that asset, as Aaron said, they could either leave it and pull income from it. They could add it to their IRA assets. And frankly, if they were under 72, they wouldn't have to pull money out unless they wanted to. Why pay taxes on money that you're not required to consume? Right?
Right.
So what happens is that by doing it in this way, by naming a trust as a beneficiary, they actually took choices out of the hands of the spouse. They reduced the amount of flexibility, and they, again, treated them like a non-spousal IRA. And we've seen this happen a couple times.
Right.
At the end of the day, it wasn't the intent of the original account over to actually do this. But what happened was like, well, I have a trust now, so make my beneficiary the trust.
No.
We listen to the lawyers.
No.
We follow the client's requests.
Sure.
But sometimes it isn't necessarily in the best interest. So what I would suggest to you, we're suggesting to you, is that if you do have a trust, which you've created, and there are reasons for doing that, and also today, reasons we've talked about this here, and we were driving over today, is the beneficiary IRA trusts.
Right. So these are now being created not because individuals don't trust, but because beneficiary or inherited IRAs do not carry the same creditor protections that your personal retirement assets carry. Because the IRS has determined that inherited or beneficiary IRAs are technically the undistributed retirement assets of the original owner, creditors can come after you for that money. So someone slips and falls on your property, you get into a car accident, these are above your limits, that money they could come after you for that money. So some parents have decided for their children that they would like to create these beneficiary IRA trusts in which the IRAs flow directly into those beneficiary IRA trusts, which create the protection around those assets as well.
And that's cool.
But they're still subject to the 10-year distribution rules.
Right. Whereas before, they were really most of our non-spouse client beneficiaries usually take the required amount, which is based on their age, and it's usually significantly less than the person that they're inheriting those assets from. That's all out the window now.
Right.
Except for if you have a young beneficiary who's under the age of 18, they could continue to do requirement
until 18.
And then they're subject to the 10-year rule.
So basically by the time everybody's 28 years old. So
yeah. A very different planning scenario here than was in the past.
Right.
When we think about, and really, we're not going to get into this conversation today because I talked about it last week, but we'll probably do it again real soon. Which is, in truth, two things have happened. The first thing is that we know that the unified credit exemption, which is the amount that you can gift from your estate at the time of your death, is currently of $11 million per person.
It's 22 combined.
If you're married.
Right.
I wish we had folks.
We wish we had this problem more often.
Right. Most folks, unless they're business owners, successful ones, or probably
we got a real big life insurance contract,
or family farms, they're going to be able to pass their assets to their heirs without federal state tax, which is cool.
Federal estate tax.
It still doesn't deal with the income tax issue.
No.
Just something to think about. That's why we're having these conversations with everybody today about.
And that also doesn't necessarily mean Roth conversion. There are many alternatives to you paying the taxes up front and being hit with a multitude of different I wouldn't call them penalties, but extra taxes that you did not think about. For example, increasing your Medicare premiums for a year or multiple years if it takes that long to do Roth conversions, paying at the very highest tax bracket when you're doing Roth conversions because you're trying to convert large amounts of money. And also potentially losing the growth on all the taxes that you had to pay to get those money into Roth. So that Roth conversion is one option. It's not the only option for trying to create a effective strategy for passing assets on in terms of taxes.
You know, and these are planning considerations that weren't going on by folks 10, 15 years ago.
Even 3 years ago.
Right. I mean, we weren't really having these conversations. Well, we talked about...
Because the stretch was always available.
Exactly. So that those client beneficiaries could pull out 2, 3, 4% until they're age 80. Now we're in a very different place. So with the laws being in place, with the 10-year rule in terms of how these assets are moved, I think we really need to think about our beneficiaries in a very different way. And the question really becomes, as Aaron, you and I were talking about this morning, for everyone that's listening to my voice, based on normal mortality.
Hears my voice.
No, based on normal mortality. If you're someone that is as an example, one of our clients, their average age when they come with us is usually somewhere in their, we'll call it
low 60s.
Low 60s, right? 58 to 62. That's really the range that most folks, and we're helping them get out. Normal mortality, we know that their life expectancy is approximately 17 years, but it's 17 years plus every day that they're alive.
Right. You don't just fall off the cliff of mortality, and you're not living on borrowed time if you make it 17 years past it. It just keeps pushing out further and further.
Right. And I think one thing they should consider, or at least we're talking about with them, is that their children will probably be their age when they're actually inheriting property.
Right.
They could be at their highest earning peaks, right?
Right.
Hopefully they're in a financially situation where they're secure, etc. Their grandchildren are going to be in their 30s, 40s. Which
could be mid, hopefully low earning. Not hopefully, but lower than it's going to be.
They're at the, they're really kind of at the beginning of their careers, and actually their grandchildren, great-grandchildren could be in their teens if they're,
or even little babies.
Right. Effectively passing property, actually securing family wealth, really means paying less amount of tax on it. So therefore, does it make sense maybe for us to reevaluate
who gets what money and when?
And when. The other thing we had been discussing was, and I hopefully don't get in trouble for saying this, but...
Well, we're down to the last minute, so don't ruin it for us.
Which is where we are today, projecting any reasonable or even low amount of growth over a 20-year period. You would like to hope that your assets could even double, maybe even quadruple.
Right, simply using the time value of money, saying today... Considering what you're passing in today's value really isn't going to be reflective of what you're passing on in 20 years' value.
So as Aaron and I were, at least I think we feel like we've come to the conclusion, is that some of the most valuable work that we're doing for our clients, even though they pay us to grow their money prudently, preserve, protect, and prudently grow, that's how they pay us. These conversations that we should be having, that we are having, that you need to be having with your spouses.
And your advisors.
Maybe can be the most impactful things that can happen over the next 20, 30, 40, 50, maybe even 100 years. You can really...
leaving a legacy.
That's right. So if we're going to leave a legacy, it's something to think about. And we like to think about these as a part of the game plan.
That we create during our coaching sessions.
Which, as you know, is fun. They're free.
No obligations at our office, by Zoom, by phone.
Exactly. Or in person if you decide you'd like to go that way. Easy to do. Pick up the phone. Give us a call. 314-863-0008. Again, 314-863-0008. Or go to our website, jblfinancial.com.
The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and JBL Financial Services, Inc. are separate entities from LPL Financial.
This is Jeff Lapidus, the Retirement Coach. We'll be back next week at 10 a.m. here on the Big 550 KTRS.